Sir, you don't look so poor. Why do you bring your own basket? And that's a mentality change that, we need to make. Consumption doesn't have to be a sign of wealth, or you shouldn't be ashamed of reducing your consumption in the name of environmental sustainability. 2 generations ago, people were really poor, and therefore having a plastic bag was a sign of wealth.
Sampurasun, and welcome to Genusian podcast, where we bring you the latest news, events, and the most happening people at Nusa Putra University. It has been a very delightful week at Nusa Putra University because this week we have organized the Ambassador Talk, in which our guest has been Dr. Miklos Gaspar. Dr. Miklos Gaspar is a graduate of the University of Budapest and a specialist in linguistics. He has had a checkered career over the years, and presently he is a UN diplomat with the position of Director of the United Nations Information Center at Jakarta, which covers both Indonesia and Philippines. It's my proud privilege to welcome Dr. Miklos Gaspar. Welcome, Dr. Miklos.
Thank you, David. It's great to be here.
It's such a pleasure to have you here, sir. So can you please tell us something about your journey to being the Director of the United Nations Information Center at Jakarta and your entire journey in the diplomatic career that you have presently, sir?
Thank you. So I am from Hungary originally. I am a journalist, and I co-founded an internet startup at some point in my life. But at one point, I just wanted to do something more meaningful. And so I looked for opportunities where I could contribute to sustainable development. And I applied for a job with the United Nations with the International Trade Center, which is a joint agency of the UN and the World Trade Organization in Geneva. I worked there for 6 years in communication. And then I moved to the International Atomic Energy Agency, which is in Vienna, and I was the chief of digital communication there. Both of these organizations are without field offices. So they don't have offices in different countries like Indonesia, which meant that me, as the communication guy at headquarters, got to travel around the world to visit projects of these agencies. And I had been to Indonesia maybe 5 times before I started working here, and I always really liked it. So when this opportunity came up, I thought, let me see what it's like to live in Indonesia and represent the UN in this capacity. So that's how I got here. I've been based in Jakarta for 2.5 years now as the director of the UN Information Center, as you said, for both Indonesia and the Philippines.
So it's such a checkered career, sir. In fact, from Hungary to Vienna in Austria, then to Indonesia. So how do you like Indonesia after seeing the world? How's Indonesia suiting you, if I may ask?
So very much. First of all, I really don't miss European winters. So my daughter and I sometimes have arguments about this because she misses European winters. While for me, it's so nice, it's always warm. I mean, it's true, sometimes it's a bit too warm, but I love the rainy season when it's more moderate, also less polluted in Jakarta. Indonesia is a diverse country with very great and friendly people. People are really busy, but they're never too busy to chat with you and share.
Yes,
and I'm privileged to be able to travel across the country for my work as part of my job, to visit UN projects, to speak at universities, engage with the media, and I have always learned so much. Indonesia is such a multicultural country, and everything is great, except perhaps for me, the sambal. So the first term I learned in Indonesian was tidak pedas. But look, we are improving. I mean, when we first moved here, all my daughter could eat was nasi putih in the restaurants. Now she can start eating other things as well.
In fact, so Indonesia is a gastronomic delight for someone coming from Europe, especially because European food, I found it to be quite bland, sir. But there's a real diversity in the spices and tastes of Indonesia. So it's you have been here for some time. Can you please tell us about what the United Nations Information Center, of which you are the director and you are heading, what it's been engaged in, what its role is, and broadly about its scope and parameters?
Sure, thank you. So the United Nations Information Center is like the communication arm of the United Nations, in this case in Indonesia. So we reach out to the communities. That's why I'm here today. I had a lecture and an engagement with the students here, answering their questions, sort of breaking down what the United Nations is, what it does, and why it could be important for young people, and certainly why young people are important for the United Nations. We also communicate and publicize the impact of the work that the United Nations does in support of the government and at the request of the government to support sustainable development in Indonesia. We communicate this both to an international audience, so they understand, but also to a global audience. So they, including donors, but also member states, the international community, understand how the UN and the government of Indonesia work hand in hand to support development and help particularly vulnerable populations within Indonesia.
So today, when you were speaking, there was a lot of enthusiasm and students were engaging with you. Can you please speak something about how our students who are young at the threshold of life and are very keen to join the United Nations, can you please give some guidance as to how they can prepare themselves to become United Nations professionals?
Well, there are many ways to join the United Nations and to support its goals. And, people can do it in their own lives every day. Perhaps, we can elaborate on that later. Joining the UN as a staff member is certainly one option. I must say, it's also a pretty difficult one, particularly at the stage of life they are at. Because for junior jobs, because they're junior jobs, no or very little experience is required. That means that a lot of people apply for a job. And when 200 people apply, 100 of whom or 50 of whom are excellent, it is very, very difficult to stand out. So a lot depends, I'm sure, on luck. So typically I encourage young people who want a career in the UN to apply for jobs they like, but at the same time also pursue an alternative career path, which will also give them experience so that later in their career they can apply for jobs that already require experience, which therefore mean fewer applicants. So I joined the UN mid-career, in my mid-30s, and by which time I got in not an entry-level position, but like a mid position, where I don't know, I wasn't involved in my own selection process, but I know from other similar processes, it's still very competitive, but it's not 250 people applying. Having said that, in Indonesia and in several countries in this region, we also run the UNV, the UN Volunteers Program, which provides young people not with jobs, but with an entry-level opportunity to learn about the world, to learn about the UN, to learn about sustainable development, and get a position for a few years within the UN as a UN volunteer. We call this volunteer. It doesn't mean you work for free. You get a stipend to cover your living expenses, because we really want to make sure that regardless of their financial background, everybody can afford to apply for these jobs. Now, of course, what you learn in these UNV positions may help you later in your career to get a staff post in the UN. But for some people, it's also the experience they need, helps them figure out what they want and go back to the job market and find another kind of job.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. So you have done your PhD in linguistics, and we were having a conversation about language and how important it is. And you were telling me that it's very important to have command over some international languages to be able to work in United Nations, because it's an international job which takes you to different countries. So I would like to ask on behalf of our students and others who are interested in joining the United Nations, which language would you say that one should be fluent in, and how can one position oneself, what level of fluency is required and all that, from your experience as a linguist, not just as a United Nations diplomat?
Look, you work in academia, so you know what we specialize in as academics is maybe not that applicable practically in real life. Indeed, my thesis is in theoretical linguistics. It's about grammar, comparative grammar. which is one reason why I really enjoy learning languages and finding out about languages, even if I don't learn them. I must be one of the few people in the world who actually like grammar.
Yes.
So, I mean, here I really enjoy the grammar of Indonesian, which people sometimes say is an easy language. It's, in my view, and that's my professional opinion as a linguist, is not true at all. There's no such thing as an easy language. Indonesian is an accessible language. It is relatively simple to get to like a pidgin Indonesian level where people understand you. But the nuances are really complicated, you know, the formal and the informal, and then all the loan words from Javanese and you know, some
Arabic, Sanskrit.
You know, extremely complicated.
Yes.
I mean, I understand radio, but I don't understand people on the street, right? And that's relatively uncommon when you learn a language, that you don't understand people on the street, which should be the most important. Anyway, that aside, that was me as a linguist. So me as a UN professional, there are two working languages of the UN, English and French. You need to speak at a very fluent level, almost native-like level, at least one of these. In each job description, it's described which one. For most jobs these days, it's English. If you work in West Africa, it would be French. Speaking both is an advantage for many jobs, but I'm not suggesting that your students now take a French class. More important, that they speak English correctly. In Indonesia, of course, many people speak English, but they speak English, you know, not correctly, let's say, right? Indonesian grammar and English grammar are very different. It is more difficult for an Indonesian to learn English than it is for a German or a French person. That's how it is. You need to speak properly, even if you have a limited vocabulary. Otherwise, it's very hard to be considered for a job in the UN. So that's just the hard reality. Always make sure when you apply for a UN job that you meet all the mandatory criteria in the job description. If you don't, it's not worth applying. They simply cannot select you. I mean, ideally, you should meet all of the what are called desirable criteria, but at least some of them. If you don't, you can still throw your hat in the ring, but you've got to meet all the mandatory requirements. And language, mostly English, will almost always be mandatory.
Thank you, sir. In fact, English language is one of the areas that Nusa Putra University stresses on, because we want our graduates to have global careers, not just in Indonesia, but abroad as well. We have an English language center here, so which is affiliated to the British Council, and we offer courses to our students so that they can attain fluency in English. And we have got graded programs, and all our students have the opportunity to undertake these courses. And I'm sure that what you have told about English being a mandatory requirement for getting jobs in United Nations will now motivate some of them to at least join our English language center. So, before we end, you have told me that you are very passionate about sustainable development. So can you please tell a message to our students, to our viewers, about sustainable development and how the youth of Indonesia, the students of Indonesia, who have a vision supporting the sustainable development goals of the United Nations, how they can play a role in supporting the vision for the future as one humanity?
Thank you. Very important question. Sustainable development goals, by the United Nations, but also the development objectives of Indonesia, are a lot more relevant for young people than for old people. Why? Because they will be around for longer. You know, old people will die sooner. Therefore, whatever mistakes we may make collectively as humanity today will have a bigger impact on those who are young today, let alone those who are not yet born, than older people. So therefore, young people have more at stake. So I encourage them to therefore also, you know, take a big role. In fact, without the dynamism, energy, and expertise of young people, there's no way that the world can reach sustainable development goals. And we don't just need to think about policy formulation. You know, you don't have to be a minister to be able to do something for the sustainable development goals. As a regular person, you can also do a lot. You can do a lot in your private life. For instance, you know, let's say, let's take the environmental goals, climate change, right? We have to lower greenhouse gas emissions. All of us have to have a role in that. You know, take public transport, if there's public transport available where you live. try to minimize the consumption of plastic. Yeah, have a tumbler, like we have these tumblers here, and use a water fountain to fill in your bottle. Don't have the air conditioner blast at 16 degrees while the door is open. Take your shopping bag to the store or to the kakilima at the end of your street to get your vegetables. So these may be small, but they make a difference. Directly, but also indirectly. Other people will see you do that, and then it will give them an idea. If you allow me, let me give you an example from my own from my own life. So I live in South Jakarta, and there is a vegetable stand on our street, and I bring my basket. And it's basically me and the pembantu from the neighboring houses, the typical shoppers there. And one time, one old lady asked me, "Sir, you don't look so poor. Why do you bring your own basket?" And that's a mentality change that we need to make. Consumption doesn't have to be a sign of wealth, or you shouldn't be ashamed of reducing your consumption in the name of environmental sustainability. 2 generations ago, people were really poor, and therefore having a plastic bag was a sign of wealth. We need to over time change that, and by giving examples, we try to change that. Another thing I try to do is I have a car and a driver, but I try to take public transport as much as possible in Jakarta. I'm lucky because I live near the MRT and the office is near the MRT, but also the bus system. Already in the 2.5 years I've lived here, Transjakarta is improving, particularly when they have the special bus lanes. You can now follow in real time when the bus comes. It may take a bit longer, but we have to decongest the city. So there are other areas, gender equality, there are education. I encourage all young people, whatever topic you are passionate about, find a way that you in your own life can contribute to sustainable development. Again, first through what you do, but also through the example you thereby provide to your community. And those young people who are comfortable with it and post about this on social media, even better. You become an influencer. Because who will other young people listen to? The United Nations? The government? Yeah, but they will listen even more to other young people like them. So really, as a student at Nusa Putra University, there's a lot you can do. There's a lot in your power that you can do to support sustainable development and, enhance the betterment of the world.
Thank you, sir. Your message is really something that is very pertinent and very urgent, I would say, to our world today. Things are actually in the hands of the youth of today. We are very fortunate to have with us Dr. Miklos Gaspar, who has given us an overview of the United Nations Information Center. All our students and all those viewers who are interested to join in the mission of the United Nations to create a better world for everyone so that no one is left behind, and all of us have a better future where everyone has rights, equality, and sustainable development. Do join the movement of the United Nations, and till we meet again next week, Sampurasu.